Hello, everyone. We are doing a panel today on hacking. Ooh,
Scary.
the sensationalized word in all these movies and somehow magically enhancing computer programs that seem to only exist on CSI. But this panel today is really mostly about a little of the history of sort of everything kind of actually behind this word and some general tips and advice for the everyday person and what they actually need to worry about. So introductions. I'm Alexx. You've probably seen me around a little bit. I'm DevOps director here at Furality, but I also do a lot of other shit. And in my quote unquote day job, I'm a security engineer at PlayStation, and I have, I don't know, over 10 years of experience in full stack development and application security. And then right next to me is...
Hi, I'm Janaeos. I am the vice chair of Hack Your Lives, the 501c3 behind DEFCON FURS. I'm also on the DevOps team at Furality. In fact, I just staff a lot of the same things that Allo does. I have been a DevOps engineer, SRE, and now an SRE manager for the past 10 or 12 years, currently working in the GovTech space, and I've been going to DEFCON for, I think, 7 or 8 years now. Actually longer. Yeah, 22 definitely was my first one, so 10 years.
Really? 22 was my first one too, but I don't think we hung out then.
We did not.
Yeah, that's crazy. So we both mentioned DEFCON FURS. So this panel is kind of being hosted by DEFCON FURS. We did a panel last year talking about all about DEFCON FURS, and we figured we'd bring something new for this year. But DEFCON FURS, it's basically a mini FurCon attached to DEFCON, the hacker convention in August 8th through the 11th this year. We have a Telegram group that's probably our most active place you'll find us, which is at DEFCON FURS spelled out. You know, if you're interested in going to DEFCON, check us out on Twitter, follow us. We'll have more information coming up soon on that. But yeah, this panel is not about DEFCON. It's about hacking. So why don't you start us off? What is hacking?
Yeah, so there's been a lot of evolution of this term over the years. The dictionary says that it's a person skilled in information technology who achieves goals by non-standard means. In popular culture, it usually refers to somebody that's a security hacker, somebody that's breaking into computer systems and, you know, stealing all your data and stealing your credit cards and emailing your wife. Hacking can actually be a lot more than that, though. It could be lockpicking. It could be physically breaking and entering into a building without leaving a trace. It could be opening packages that are tamper-proof sealed. Really, it's people who like to learn how to exploit systems, right? Not just computer systems, but locks and alarm systems and buildings and even people towards some kind of goal.
Yeah, all about subverting the system, going around what you're meant to do. So with this, there's a couple, you know, thoughts behind sort of the interaction with this term of going around things and you know, either playing by the rules or not. Most of the time in common media culture, I mean, if you Google hacking, you're going to get the guy with the ski mask ready to rob a bank, even though he's literally like in some random location with a computer, right? But you know,
I think I used that image in this deck, actually.
It's so stereotypical. You know, but obviously there's a lot of things that goes into this, especially when it comes to computers and you know, all around us, we're surrounded by them. I mean, even right now in VR, right, we're on a computer, and so there's security around that, and you know, not everybody is a bad guy. There's some industry, I guess, in terms where here it's like white hat, black hat, gray hat. It's mostly sort of just white hat, basically people that are working in infosec or around hacking. I mean, this is mostly around the computer stuff, but just sort of the good guys. Woo, but we, you know,
not
we
just
do a lot
around
of
the computer stuff even. I was going to say, not even just against not even just the computer stuff, right? You have white hat people who will do pen tests on buildings and try to break and enter to help you improve your security, right? And usually these are people that you hire or have a contract with that work for some sort of firm that this is what they do.
They have permission. They have permission to break your shit.
Exactly.
Get permission. Don't hack things you don't own. And just because you pay for an AWS instance doesn't mean you own it. You have to talk to AWS before you do bad things with it, like to test your own stuff. So, you know, you have permission. You're doing what you should do. That's mainly what white hat is. Black hat is, you know, all the criminals that are doing things without permission and what they shouldn't be doing. And, you know, how would you define gray hat?
So gray hat really falls into the middle ground. These aren't necessarily people that are trying to steal your data, but these are people that are kind of pushing the letter of the law and maybe even breaking laws to see what they can do and how far they can get in your system. Those of you who have been in the furry fandom for a while may remember a site called Furby that was around for a long time. There was a hacker in our community that actually, she was a white hat, and she tested Furby and found some things that were probably shouldn't have been public. They were database credentials that were just exposed to the open internet, and she was able to find them. And when she did, she reported them, and she said, hey, I'm not going to go any further than this because that would be breaking the law. And that's white hat, right? If you're a gray hat, maybe you go further and you look and you see what's there, but you don't take it as far as actually like exfiltrating data from the database or stealing something from that company, right? But you are breaking laws and taking it further and actually trespassing on someone's system.
Yeah, you did it without permission. You should always get permission.
Yep.
History of hacking. Yeah. I'll let you do this timeline. You put it together.
Yeah, so let me step over here just so I can follow along in my deck. Perfect. So I figured today we would talk a little bit about where hacking started, where it came from, and kind of some of the cool stuff that was done that has created modern hacker culture. And we're going to start back in 1965. And this is a story that gets passed around at DEFCON a lot and really was the genesis of a lot of hacker culture. In 1965, a hacker named Captain Crunch learned that he could take a whistle that was found in a Captain Crunch box, hence his name, blow it into a payphone and get free calls on the payphone. He would basically be able to bypass everything that he needed to pay for and get free calls. That number, 2600 hertz, is actually really stuck in the hacker community. And up until recently, there was a magazine called 2600 for the hacker community based on the frequency that this whistle would blow. In 1971, the first penetration test ever was performed by the U.S. Air Force. So they formed Tiger teams that was made up of both military personnel and contractors, and hired people to actually see if they could start to exploit and get into Air Force systems. Before this, really nothing like this had been done before because this wasn't seen as a risk, right? But this was when ARPANET was just getting started. The idea of networking computers together was just getting started, and more important data was being held on computers, so they needed to make sure that that data was secure. In that same year, the first virus ever, not on the internet, but on ARPANET, was deployed, and that virus was called Creeper. If you guys can see the deck down in the right-hand side, you can actually see what the Creeper did. And all it did was, when you got infected by the Creeper, you would get a message on your teletype, which is what they called a screen, and it was basically a screen, but it would output one character at a time. You would get a message on your TTY saying, "I am the Creeper, capture me if you can." Right? And that's all the virus did, but it was a virus. It was something you didn't want on your computer. It interrupted you. It got in the way of your workflow. And so that very same year, someone made the first antivirus, and it was called Reaper. Reaper used the same network traversal mechanisms as Creeper to actually get into your computer, see if you had Creeper there, remove it, and then remove itself. And that's all that Reaper would do. In 1975, the term worm was used for the first time in a book, you should read it if you haven't, called The Shockwave Rider by John Brunner. We still use that term today for certain types of viruses like Creeper and Reaper that actually use the network or use a way to get into your computer and then from your computer pivot to other computers that it can access. Next slide. Cool. So in 1982, the first microcomputer viruses. Basically, before now, every computer that was infected was a supercomputer, either run by the military or some university that was on ARPANET. But in 1982, microcomputers were starting to proliferate around the world, and the first microcomputer viruses were actually created, the first one being known as Elk Cloner. And you can kind of see the text there. I will get on your disk. I will infiltrate your chips. I'm Elk Cloner. It will stick to you like glue. It will modify RAM 2. I'm the Elk Cloner. This was the first thing that really modified. I know, everything was so pony. Some of these were just ridiculous. But this was another worm that would actually just traverse and get into microcomputers. This was actually distributed on floppy disks because at this time, microcomputers basically weren't on the internet. And so infected floppies were actually being put into the supply chain. And people were installing software and then all of a sudden find themselves with Elk Cloner. And keep in mind, at this point, there really was no antivirus. People didn't know that this was something that could happen. 1984, this was when academia really started to get concerned about viruses. A hacker called Ken Thompson, still very relevant today, published a paper called Reflections on Trusting Trust. And in that paper, and this is going to get a little bit in the technical weeds, I'm not really sure how to make it more accessible, but basically what Reflections on Trusting Trust said, or posited, was Ken Thompson was able to make a compiler level attack on Unix systems. And what that means is, if you take a step back in time, you used to have to actually compile your operating system because commodity hardware wasn't really a thing. If you wanted to run Unix, you had to compile it for the system and the hardware that you were building it on. And the attack that Ken Thompson detailed in Reflections on Trusting Trust was an attack where he, as you were compiling Unix, would detect that you were compiling Unix and then infect your login binary so that when you logged into Unix, you would be infected automatically. And in fact, he would infect the compiler that installed with Unix so that if you compiled a new version of the kernel or a new login binary, it would still be infected. This was probably at the time the most sophisticated attack that had been detailed. And it really started academia down the track of starting to think about what they could do to protect against this, because this was obviously a nascent threat. Just a couple years later, this really kind of showed in the wild. 1986, the Brain boot sector virus, which affected IBM microcomputers, was the first malware to infect IBM microcomputers. And this was really kind of like the start of commodity hardware, right? This is, people are starting to get computers in their homes. These are personal computers. And all of a sudden you have a virus that not only is infecting these computers, but is doing so in the boot sector, meaning even if you reinstall your operating system, if you reinstall all your software, if you wipe everything, unless you actually are technical enough to wipe your boot sector and rebuild it, which wasn't very easy or very common in this day, you were still infected. So you reinstall your operating system, you still have a virus. This was the same year that the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act was enacted. And this law, or a version of it, is still in effect today. And basically, it spells out federally what the penalties are and what the definition is of computer trespass. Stepping back to that black hat, white hat slide, white hats won't violate this in their attempt to get to your data to see what's misconfigured on your system. Gray hats will. Cool. So 1987, just a year later, the first commercial antivirus products became available. Some names that you might recognize: Kaspersky, McAfee, and one name, and in fact that's the screenshot that I have here, that you probably don't, which is Nod32. I actually looked this up as I was writing this talk. They do still make an antivirus. I don't think anybody uses it in production today, but they do still make an antivirus. And this is what it looked like, right? Very different than the antiviruses of today. In fact, if you're running a modern version of Windows, you've probably never even seen your antivirus. It's just kind of there. 1989. I didn't actually know this when I started doing research for the deck. I thought ransomware was something that had just popped up in the last 10 or 15 years. But it turns out the first ransomware virus was in 1989, and it was called the AIDS Trojan. And it would infect your computer, and it would actually demand that you send $199 to a P.O. box in, I want to say, Panama City. I'd have to double check on that. But basically, it would lock down your computer and hold it ransom unless you sent $199 to this P.O. box via snail mail, waited for them to send you back the way to get this virus off your computer. 1990s, now we have the internet. And not only do we have the internet, we actually have a hacker culture that through all these years has started to build up. And so in 1993, the first DEFCON convention was held. There's different stories depending on who you ask. According to Dark Tangent, this was a birthday party for a friend that was in the community. According to other people, this was actually a goodbye party to BBS or bulletin board systems. But either way, it was the first real hacking convention that had ever happened. Basically gathering a bunch of people in one place to talk about cybersecurity and talk about hacking and lockpicking and getting into tamper-proof boxes. You might recognize the name DEFCON from earlier in our talk. This is still going today, and this year is going to be year number 33?
32.
32? Yeah, 32. So the first one was very small. It was a couple hundred people. Today it's like 30,000 people or something like that. It is absolutely massive. 1995. So obviously phishing, and we'll talk a little bit about that later, but phishing very shortly is when someone tries to manipulate you to get your credentials to something by, telling you that they belong to IT or telling you that they're going to fix your computer. It's been around for a long time. Even before the internet or before computers, people would manipulate you and lie to get access to your stuff. But 1995, back in the days of AOL and CompuServe, if any of you were around for that, a tool came out called AOL. Interestingly, I actually had this tool. I had used it. I didn't realize the significance of it at the time. And there's a couple tools in here that are in that same story. AOL had a tool in it that you could use to have it automatically talk with someone on AOL Instant Messenger to try and get them out of their credentials. And so it would run through a script with like a question and answer script, depending on what people said, trying to tell you that you were AOL customer service trying to help this person that you were attacking get their viruses removed or get their account fixed or something like that. And the idea was, and especially with less cybersecurity awareness in 1995 than we have now, that this script would automatically just attack these people and try to get their credentials, and then you would be left at the end with a list of credentials that you could use to access things. Excuse me one sec.
Back before there was even ChatGPT, there was things talking to you.
Yep, this was obviously not, well, maybe it was as smart as ChatGPT, but not as mature as ChatGPT. Excuse me. 1999, Sub 7. This is another one of those that I didn't realize that this didn't exist before I played with it back when I was 12, 13 years old. Sub 7 was the first in the class of viruses known as RATs, or remote administration tools. And basically, like, the name remote administration tool sounds kind of innocuous, right? It means, hey, you're remote and you can access your computer and you can administer it. And in fact, there's many RATs that are innocuous and are benign and are actually used for legitimate purposes. Sub 7 was not one of those. I remember when I first discovered Sub 7, I was back on IRC, and those of you who were on IRC probably around this time period remember that there was a huge issue where if you joined an IRC chat, people would all of a sudden start sending you files. And the default configuration at the time for the most popular IRC client, MIRC, was to automatically accept those files and download them. Similarly, the configuration for MIRC was that if any of those files happened to be MIRC scripts, they would get loaded up automatically during the next boot up of MIRC. And so the way that this infected your machine was someone would send you a file when you joined an IRC chat. The next time you booted up IRC, that file was an MIRC IRC script. It would then go to the internet, download Sub 7, launch it on your computer, and all of a sudden, your computer was able to be managed via Sub 7. And in fact, the way that they reported to the Sub 7 commanders, which were a ton of people, was by reporting into an IRC room and saying, hey, I'm here, here's my IP address, I'm available. And you can see the control panel here. It could do all kinds of neat stuff. It could, the way I realized I was infected was it would actually, somebody was remotely opening and closing my CD-ROM drive, and I had no idea what the hell was going on.
It's like sort of botnet, basically.
Basically, it was the precursor to a botnet, right? And it kind of proved that botnets could be a thing. Interestingly, this was like how I got into hacking and security culture. I actually was able to figure out what had happened, read through the IRC script, and at this time I didn't really know programming, and figure out what room my Sub 7 was reporting to, and I went to that server, to that IRC room, joined. They immediately banned me. I messaged somebody that I was able to see that was in there, and I actually, at the time, became someone who could see the people who were infected by Sub 7, and that was kind of my intro to getting into cybersec. So I kind of shortened this just because 2000s and beyond, it's just a lot of the same, but a lot of significant things. So first in 2000, we have the I Love You worm. It infected millions of computers within hours of release. Nothing like this had ever happened before, partially because it really wasn't possible because the internet wasn't as widespread until 2000. But this was all over the news in 2000 if you were around. 2004, SQL Slammer, the fastest spreading worm of all time, and this actually attacked Microsoft SQL Server, which is an enterprise level database used by tons of companies and even more back then. 2007, the Storm botnet, and this was the first botnet that really proved out that botnets were a thing. It infected approximately 50 million computers, the exact numbers not known, but at the time it accounted for 8% of all malware detected in the world. Stuxnet probably could even have its own slide, but I'll give you the TLDR. Stuxnet attacked industrial systems, and it was in fact the first supposedly state-sponsored virus. And I say supposedly state-sponsored, not supposedly first. If it was state-sponsored, it was definitely the first. Nobody has ever claimed responsibility for Stuxnet, but Stuxnet attacked oil refineries and nuclear facilities in Iran. And in fact, it spread through so many computers all across the world. And it did so undetected because it did nothing. But when it hit those particular nuclear facilities and oil refineries in Iran, all of a sudden it woke up and it started attacking them, and it shut down an Iran nuclear plant with catastrophic consequences. 2011, this was a huge phishing attack. RSA Secure ID basically is like the precursor to getting to MFA today, right? And we'll talk about MFA in a little bit. But it used to be that RSA Secure ID, they would actually issue hardware tokens, and you would wear them on your keychain. In fact, I had one about 8 or 9 years ago at my previous job. Yeah. And you would have them on your keychain, and it would have a rotating key. And when you went to log into something, you would look at the key and you would enter it on the computer. In 2011, RSA was phished. And they were phished out of the master keys that generated those rotating passwords for every single one of those hardware keys in existence. Basically requiring RSA to not only reissue those keys, but since these were offline devices that you just wore on your keychain, reissue every single RSA token in existence. And then finally, in 2017, the first DEFCON FURS was held. I wasn't there, AlloFox was, along with the other founders, KFox, Draino the Cat, and Tanuski.
Yeah. Started the party at DEFCON for all the furs that are in infosec that go there. But yeah, so I mean, a lot of this history kind of predates many of us, most of us. I mean, more recent stuff, obviously, but like it's all become such of this not so much talked about, not so much thought about past of now we're so connected. Like everybody has a cell phone probably that's connected to the internet right now with a bunch of different apps, and it's just sitting on their desk or in their pocket, and they walk around. And, you know, I've seen toasters that talk to the internet for who knows why we needed that, but that's a thing. And obviously the fridge has a tablet in it now. And so like everything is so connected to the internet now, and it's all, everyone's trying to mess with it, and all of this sort of history of getting around things and trying to take advantage of systems or just pranking people. Like not everybody who does a virus or something is trying to necessarily steal anything, but it's still, they're still going where they're not supposed to be, or doing something where they don't have permission. And for better or for worse, it's just there's an importance we should all have on protecting at least our accounts and the stuff that we care about most. Like, for example, your bank account, your PayPal account, or your identity stuff. If your social security number, all that things. When you have private information, you generally don't want that just posted to the internet. So kind of something that I wanted this panel to talk about, and it's really only mainly used in security and security kind of, at least where I've seen it at work, where we call it threat modeling, where we're kind of like analyzing like what are the actual things that are vulnerable? Who's actually out there wanting to do something with that? How much at risk are we? And, there's whole weeks long things. There's quick whiteboard sessions. There's, tabletop exercise that all the big companies do to kind of figure out and think ahead of, the other side of what they're going to do. But I think it's something that we could really apply to just everyone's everyday life, especially when we're constantly surrounded by stuff we hear on Twitter, or see on Twitter, read on Twitter rather, or see on the news for those that still watch TV today. But there's headlines somewhere. TikTok, Twitter, Blue Sky, your Discord server, everyone pings that go off every 5 seconds. Wherever you get your news, there's always, oh, watch out, so and so is hacked. Don't reply to this person or whatever, right? And take these actions now to protect yourself. And you're just like, you know what? I'm just going to ignore everything because I just don't want to think about it. And screw it, right? There's this sort of overload of information we all have all the time because we're just constantly connected to our friends and social media and everything. So I kind of want to like take a few seconds to say, not everything that is on fire is your fire. Like there's companies get hacked every day. Everyone kind of heard about Target. I mean, you Google any company name, there's probably something in it, and does that have anything to do with you? Are you at risk? And if everybody's getting hacked, what could I possibly do? Well, good news is the things that you really need to worry about most are actually pretty simple to take care of, and is the most overlooked thing that I've generally find with all the people that I've interacted with and that aren't already like in the hacking culture, like just normal everyday friends and just random people that I'll talk to sometimes and talking about this kind of stuff. Like, I'm sure you guys have heard of a password manager, but how many of you actually using one? And, even if you're not, that one password you have memorized that you use on like all of your websites, you shouldn't be doing that. They should be unique. So like, what I kind of want to touch on here is this idea of threat modeling is kind of what we call it, but just this, what do I as an individual need to be worried about? And then what can I actually do about it? And then kind of not worry so much about problems that, your companies of stuff that you use, it's their kind of stuff to figure out. Just worry about the things that are actually in your control. And so it's mainly going to be about securing your own accounts on stuff and kind of insulating yourself from the inevitability of whatever you're using having an issue. You touched on this earlier about phishing. This is still the number one thing, and it's the number one way that big companies get hacked, and individuals get hacked, and everyone sees this image of like some guy in a ski mask, and they're like crawling through vents, and they're hanging upside down with rope to type on a keyboard or whatever, like in Mission Impossible. That doesn't happen.
It's only like 2 slides away. That picture's there.
It's just not realistic. Like, I'm sure somebody did it somewhere for the memes, but like the whole thing is phishing. So a common thing here, this screenshot, this is from Telegram. If you it's not only on Bark, but if you use Bark, there used to be sort of this group that went around and like got everyone's Telegram accounts and then started DMing them and be like, hey, I have money for you. You probably need money. Why don't you, start talking to me? And then they would kind of get you to share things that you shouldn't be sharing about your financials. And then all of a sudden, things go missing. And a really common one that probably affects most people here, if you're in Discord, you get DMs. I think I have a picture of one, but it's very common. Be like, hey, I make art, I make avatar. You want one? I show art. Click link. And, they're usually written just like that. And they're not, you can't really tell if it's written by a robot or by a human. It doesn't really matter. You click the link, and then now you are DMing random people the same messages. That is the most effective way. The people are the dumbest thing. They're the easiest thing to manipulate, and there's no software update that you could do for it. You have $10 million invested in the next gen firewall XZ whatever, and all of the monitoring and 5 million people working in the security center, and Bob in janitorial sees a discount for a mop if you click this link, and you click the link because you're just trying to do a good job, and then boom, I have access to your computer and it's all over. And then all the rest of the stuff we showed on the slides can then take over from that point. Like, this is the number one thing. It's such a simple thing. Don't click on links that you didn't Google yourself, and like, if someone's telling you about something, go find it. You're on your own. Don't click the link they sent you. Especially if you don't know them, you're not, associated with that. But it's just, I can't emphasize it enough. This is like the number one thing. The number one thing. Stop clicking on links that you get in email or in Discord. I am.
And don't forget, if Bob from IT asks you for your password, no, he didn't.
Nobody needs your password. Stop giving people your password. But anyway, there's other kinds of quote unquote phishing that have cool terms, like vishing, where it's voicemail. Back when people used to acknowledge that there was a communication part of cell phones, we would get phone calls that we actually hit the green button on, and they would say, hi, I am your bank calling. There is a pending payment of $2,000. Do you approve? No, you want to cancel? What is your social? And you're like, what do you mean? Click. That's you, but there's 1,000 other people that be like, oh no, I don't have that money. My number is 1234, the rest. And it works. They wouldn't be doing it if it didn't work. And it totally works for them. And, that screws people out of their livelihoods, but it's just people are taking advantage of others, and it sucks. And then there's smishing, which is same thing over text, right?
Yep, smishing, same thing over text. I was going to actually give a quick anecdote. Probably about 7 years ago, I got a phone call, and it was from a tech support scammer. And this is another form of phishing, right? They're trying to say, hey, this is Microsoft. We detected a virus on your computer. Like, let us help you. And they'll get remote access and do a bunch of things. And this person said, hey, I'm from Microsoft tech support. We detected a virus on your computer. I'm like, and I just said, no, you didn't. I use Mac. And I hung up. I don't use Mac. I also don't use Windows. Immediately called me back and said, hi, I'm from Apple tech support. We detected a virus on your computer. And I just I didn't even know what to say. I was laughing so hard I just hung up. But this still happens today, right? Tech support scams still happen. Health insurance scams still happen. Many of you have probably gotten voicemails saying, open enrollment is coming to make sure that you can keep your insurance. Call this number. It's a scam.
Yeah, they set up a whole thing of urgency, and you feel really pressured because if you don't do the thing, it's really bad, and it's there's even things that aren't even viruses that still work. I mean,
yep.
grandma messages you an email or even uses Facebook and it's like, if you don't repost this to 7 people, you're gonna have bad luck. And then how many of you copy pasted that shit? You're part of the problem.
Oh, chain letters. I don't miss you.
Reply all, unsubscribe. Oh god. That's a story for a different day. Okay, so passwords. Yeah, there's been a lot of not development, but sort of evolution on this whole mentality on what should we do for passwords, and it's got to be like the most stupid thing that you could like face smash your keyboard and come up. Oh God, there goes my Vive tracker. Well, we'll see how long my hands last. Let me turn off calibration before it goes. Where is the button?
Oh, and there it goes.
There goes my hands. Oh boy. All right, hold on. Let me grab it off the floor.
While he's doing that, I'll take over real quick. So there's been a lot of evolution. It used to be like, hey, you can have your password and it can be the same everywhere. And we used to tell people, make sure it's something that you can remember so that you don't have to write it down. And at the time, that was actually really good advice. As I have a pretzel next to me.
Subverting
today,
the system.
Yeah, that advice has changed. And the reason is that, like, we're able to hack passwords now, right? We're able to get your password. And if we have your password to one place and you're using that same password elsewhere, we can use that password to figure out where else you have accounts and to get into those accounts. And so now the advice is to use not only unique passwords, but randomly generated passwords, right? Famously, there was a celebrity, it was Paris Hilton actually, who had her Twitter hacked years and years and years ago because her password was the name of her dog, Tinkerbell. So use random passwords, use unique passwords, and store them in a password manager. On the right of the screen, you'll see a couple of different options of password manager. 1Password is really good. KeePass is the one that I personally use, though it is a little bit more technical. It's offline. And then if you really need a cloud password manager but want to keep good security, the third logo here is Tresorit, which is a completely encrypted vault that includes a password manager. LastPass I didn't put on here for a reason. I would avoid. They've had some interesting security issues in the past couple of years. But if you're using that, it's better than reusing passwords. So still good job.
Are my hands still messed up? My hands are still messed up. Anyway.
Your hands are still a little messed up, but you're not a pretzel anymore.
It'll calibrate eventually. So yeah, password managers are great. Even you can go to Walmart and in the stationery section where they have notebooks, and I see it at Staples too, there is a password book that you can buy, a physical piece of paper where you can write your account, email, and password. And everybody laughs about it. Be like, don't leave it on a sticky note. But even that would be better than using the same password everywhere, because the only way people will steal that password is if they physically break into your house and like find the book. Right?
Yep. It's
I'm not recommending this method. Yeah, right. It comes back to that. Like, what do you actually need to worry about? So, password strength. I just have a really quick thing about this. There's all kinds of things, especially if you've ever gone to like college or used any kind of university software or had an account at work where you had to create a password and there's all of these rules. I mean, the social media platforms kind of do it, but they don't make it as annoying. It must be this long or be, for some banks this short and have, a capital or a special character, whatever. And there's this thing where like, we used to say you had to rotate it, and it used to be part of like PCI compliance where you had to rotate it every 90 days, and it became this normal thing. And then I think 2019, 18, sometime around there, they actually
sounds about right.
You know what? Wait a minute. You actually shouldn't be rotating your password, because after we found out that we had to make this person, all of these employees rotate their password every 90 days, they got really frustrated with it, and it became password 1, password 2, password 3, and some of you are thinking, actually, that's what I do. And you know what? A lot of people do that, and then all they do for the password, like, crackers is they just add the 1, 2, 3 or the year or whatever as part of the passwords that they try to break in with. So it's just not helping security by making people change their password that often when it's not needed. You know, if somebody steals a password, if a website gets hacked, change that password. But you know, in general, just having a long, good password is better than forcing people to keep changing it and thus make it easy to remember, meaning they make it worse.
Yep.
My hands.
Yeah, so MFA or 2FA. MFA is really a better industry term because it could be more than two factors, but it stands for multi-factor authentication. And generally, the rule here is you have your password, which is something you know, and then your MFA authenticator, whether that be a one-time password that you get via SMS or via Google Authenticator, or it could be a hardware key like you see on the left, a YubiKey or a Google Titan.
I have one of those.
Yeah, I have a Titan on my keychain right now, actually. It could also be something that you are, right? It could be your biometrics. So it could be password plus a fingerprint or Face ID or a palm print or your voice, right? And basically what this does for you is it helps you secure your account by meaning that even if your password is compromised, unless your password and your phone are also compromised or your password and your YubiKey are both compromised, people still can't gain access to your account. And so it provides an extra layer of security, meaning that even if you are reusing a password, right, or your password manager leaks, or you're using that logbook that Alla was talking about and you kept it at your desk at work and somebody grabbed it, they still don't have your MFA device, right? So the best methods, security keys, I think, are probably one of the best that you can do. Google Titans, YubiKeys, they're hardware, right? So they're not susceptible to things like SIM jacking or somebody, getting access to your phone number. They're not, other than biometrics, like they're pretty secure. New is passkeys and WebAuthn. And you guys have probably seen this on Google and some other sites where when you go to log in, it asks, would you like to set up a passkey? And your computer, whether it be by you authenticating with a fingerprint or some password managers actually have this built in, will automatically create a passkey that can be used to log into that site. Encryption.
Okay.
You good, or do you want me to handle this?
Yeah, I turned off continuous calibration. Sorry, I just got a Quest Pro, cool. And I thought command strips would be strong enough to marry a Vive tracker to it, and yeah, didn't work. Anyway, technology. Yes. Encryption. This isn't as much of a problem today as it used to be. So, like, there was a organization, and they made this product called Let's Encrypt, and it's basically giving everyone who hosts websites free SSL certificates. And you know, we use some of them on some places, even here at Furality, and like I'm seeing them even used in commercial environments because who wants to pay $80 for HTTPS? But like, they entered in 2015, and only 39% of web pages that, at least what they were surveying, actually had HTTPS, and now it's like most of the internet. And it's just, to keep it simple, this just means a little green padlock. Like, it's so prevalent now, they don't even show the green padlock anymore in the browser. But basically, all it means is that whenever you send data to the website, like your username and password, it's encrypted while it's being sent there, and anyone watching sort of the middle, they won't see it. And otherwise, it's in plain text without this, and then, you know, everybody who is on the Wi-Fi with you or whatever can see it. Kind of want to run through this a little bit. So we're running low on time, and I see some questions. Encryption in apps. I mean, Blue Sky DMs and Twitter DMs. Why are you using Twitter DMs? It's the worst IM client. Discord, obviously, a lot of people use that here. Telegram, very popular in the fandom. Signal. These are kind of in order of just whether or not they even provide end-to-end encryption. You know, Telegram technically has that ability. I have a screenshot here where you can like start a secret chat, is what they called it, with like someone that you're privately messaging. And Signal, it's all about that. Like, you need, you know, you don't want anyone ever to see your messages that it doesn't physically have your phone and the person you're talking to. Like, the servers can't see it, and you know, all of the company that runs the app can't see your information. That's what that's for. like people will talk about this and kind of, I think I'm gonna let you talk about the VPN stuff. Like you really think about, who are you hiding from? Like, you obviously don't want to share your password just to the public, but like, you're literally surrounded by technology. There's only so much you can do. And some people have like this idea where they have to like take themselves and go through all of these hoops just to use the internet with special like VPNs and everything, when all they're doing is going to Amazon.com to put in their address and their credit card information to buy the thing that they can't wait for an hour to show up. They already know where you live. You're not hiding with a VPN for that. So why don't you talk about, what is a VPN actually good for?
Yeah, so I'm sure anybody who's watched YouTube has seen a bunch of VPN ads, and I'll try to run through this very quickly. Everyone, or most of them, say a lot of the same things, right? We make you completely anonymous on the internet. We make sure that nobody can track what you're doing, where you're coming from. That's really not the whole story, right? Yes, it's true. When you're connected to a VPN, all of your data is encrypted. Guess what? Thanks to HTTPS and the EFF and their HTTPS Everywhere initiative and Let's Encrypt, most of the data you're sending over the internet is encrypted anyway. VPNs do give you a little bit more security because even your DNS requests and what site you're looking up and the initial connections are encrypted. But it's not really protecting you in that fashion, right? What it's actually doing is proxying your connection through another server somewhere in a data center. It is encrypted, so maybe if your husband or wife or boyfriend or mother or father is monitoring the internet, maybe they can't see where you're going, but they'll be able to see that you connected to a VPN. It does allow you to be on a different network. In fact, that's where the term VPN came from, virtual private network. So in a work environment, work may require you to connect to a VPN to access work things, shared drives, programs, because then they're controlling your connection, right? You're controlling through a secure connection. They can also let you be in different geographic points of presence. So when these ads talk about, oh, well, if you just connect to a UK server, you can watch Netflix and get all different shows. That part is true, right? It can actually help with that. But generally, these VPNs are not providing as much security as some of these ads may lead you to believe, right? You're still using that VPN and then going to a website and logging in with your credentials. It's not protecting those credentials. You're still putting them into that website, right? So it's not really helping in some of the ways that some of these advertisements might have you believe.
It's not a magic cloak that hides you from the world. Some of you have recognized this image, the Furality Umbra horse that, VR chat leaked to the world like 2 months ago. No, I'm just kidding. The new login page. Yeah, so all of you here at the convention and those of you that are, play VR chat as well, there's some easy things you could be doing just to keep your VR chat account secure, right? Use a password that you haven't used on any other website, because if that website gets attacked, they can't come and try it over here. Set up a 2FA app like Google Authenticator that you scan a QR code when you set it up, and then every 30 seconds, it generates a new code, and that gives you that 6-digit number to type in. And the whole point of that is if someone steals your password, they still don't have your phone. So it's like an extra layer of security. Don't share your logins with people. I know that this friend of yours is really good at Unity and I don't know how to Blender, but they can do it. And then you want them to upload your avatar for you. Don't give them your account. Have them send you the stuff you need and sit in a Discord call and figure it out and get it uploaded on your side so that you don't have to be sharing this account information with them, because even if you trust them, they might have a virus on their computer or whatever you send it on. Like, just don't do it. Just don't do it. You're opening yourself up to that risk. And be careful when you use third-party apps. Like, I know there's some popular things that extend VR chat for, and you log into them so that they can access your account, and you just, you got to be careful where you're putting your password. And just to touch quickly on, again, I kind of drove the point home here with phishing, but Discord compromises, there was a really popular one recently where it's like, hey, I'm developing a new game. Can you help me test it. I have a final, or download this link, or oh, I accidentally reported you on Steam VR or whatever, and click this link to see what people are saying about you, or just anything. If somebody DMs you randomly, just don't talk. Like, you two should be talking somewhere and be like, hey, here's my Discord, send me a DM. That's much better than just random things talking to you. Turn off DM invites on Discord, and don't click links. Just don't click links. There's some references there. Links. We got 30 seconds. Let me see. What's a good question? There's only a few in here in Discord. Some of them we covered.
Yep. That first one, would you as an expert recommend using an internet-based application like a web browser and containerization technologies like Flatpak, Snap, or other virtualization technologies? So in fact, most modern viruses, most modern browsers, I spent so much time talking about viruses, operate in a sandbox mode. So Chrome and Chromium especially, I believe Firefox does it too, they're actually operating in a sandbox. So the exposure for most people to this particular issue is pretty limited. That being said, it kind of all goes back to threat modeling, right? If you're in a super secure environment and you're working on government contracts, yeah, you probably want to explore running a more rigid sandbox around your browser.
Someone asked about like password policies. I think we kind of covered that on the password slide. Rotation's too frequent, but length is important. Yep.
We're talking about limiting max length, and yes, that's stupid.
Yeah. What are your opinion? Oh, it scrolled. What are your opinions on self-hosted password managers in a Homeland, Nextcloud passwords, or Vault Dwarven? And even like a KeyPass, that's just a program running on your computer. So like,
yep.
If you are a nerd and want to like set it up, and you have servers, and you have the time to play around with that and set that up, that's really cool. And it only means it's as insecure as your configuration, and especially if it's accessible from the internet. I doubt you have the resources that a company whose entire job is to be a password vault has on protecting your password. But if it's just on your personal computer anyway, it's just a matter of convenience. Do the thing that's going to make you have the easiest time of having a good password. If it is just one click, enter autofill, you're going to be more likely to use a password that is actually good versus something you have to manually type, or I need to log into this, and then I need to do my thumbprint, and then I need to do my retina scan, and then I need to speak a magic code like in Spy Kids, and then there's my like 16 character password. You're not going to want to do that. After a week, it's going to get real old. I think we got one more question.
So what do you recommend certification-wise to people pursuing cybersecurity careers? Rather than give you a single recommendation of a certification, go to roadmap.sh, roadmap.sh. They have a cybersecurity roadmap there. It will give you a full learning course, open source, on how you can become a cybersecurity expert, including classes, reading material, and certifications.
Yeah, nice. Well, it's been fun chatting about your amazing willingness to reply to strangers on the internet. Use better passwords, make them unique, and that's all the time we have. So thank you, Janice, for chatting with the crowd with me. Yeah, I'll see you guys later.
Thanks, everyone.